Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, Jack Chambers-Ward, and usually this is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest across SEO and digital marketing, but it's a little bit different this week. I am doing a solo episode, sort of by popular demand. I don't think my solo presence is the actual selling point here, but I'm going to be recapping the most important SEO news stories over the last 6 weeks since we're in the middle of February. So basically since the start of 2026, I've got 7 news stories I think you should know about and that have already been covered in our newsletter, Core Updates. If you're not subscribed to Core Updates, do go to coreupdates.com. I'll put a link down in the show notes and video description so you can go and check that out. Every Monday morning, Mark and I write basically about 10-ish. We don't stretch it to 10 if we don't need to. We just highlight the most important SEO news each and every week. There's also Mark's unsolicited SEO tips from his week throughout LinkedIn posts and things like that. So you can go and check those out on the newsletter as well. And every episode of the podcast is also featured on there. And yeah, a few other bits and pieces as well. It's a great piece of information for you every Monday morning to make sure you're starting your week properly and correctly to get all of the important SEO news and digital marketing news in your inbox. This is basically going to be a recap of some of the biggest stories we've covered over the last 6 weeks, and I'm planning to do more episodes like this going forward. So each month, either just myself or Mark and me will be covering basically the biggest news stories over the previous month and kind of discussing what we think is important and highlighting anything we think you might have missed. So stay tuned for that, coming up in a couple of minutes after an ad from us, from Candour. You can go and check out our website building services, our design services, and go and check out all the amazing things that our developers are doing currently. Oh, and before we get to the ad, if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe, hit the notification bell and all that good stuff on YouTube. You can follow on Spotify, leave comments on Spotify. I appreciate everybody who leaves comments and lets us know they're looking forward to Search and Orange XL, which is coming up in September, and loads of cool stuff that people are looking forward to throughout the rest of the year as well. So yeah, please do leave comments down below on things you want to see, things you want to hear from us basically throughout 2026. Without any further ado, here's an ad and I'll get to the biggest news stories. If you've ever been through a website build project, you probably know the panic. You spend months designing something beautiful, approving layouts, writing copy, and then right at the end, someone asks, wait, what about the SEO? That is exactly the scenario you want to avoid, because if you try to bolt on SEO at the end, you face the cost of things like rebuilding code or tanking the migration entirely. And that's why you need to talk to the team at Candour. You might know them from their popular podcast, Search with Candour. I mean, you probably do since you're listening to this or watching this right now, but they are also a search-first design and build agency. They don't treat search as an afterthought. It's baked in from day one. Moving to a new site isn't just a design change, it's also a data change. One wrong move with your front-end code, your redirects, or your site architecture, and you don't just lose traffic, you lose revenue. And you can wipe out years of Google trust overnight. Thankfully, Candour has renowned SEO experts who work right alongside their designers and developers to prevent that from happening. They help you avoid those nightmare migration pitfalls and, very importantly, find new opportunities for growth that other agencies miss. If you want a site that ranks as good as it looks and keeps your hard-earned traffic safe, go to withcandour.co.uk. That's withcandour.co.uk. Most great websites don't get found. Ours do. So let's get into these 7 big news stories you need to know about from 2026 so far. And I'm going to kick things off with a pretty big one for Agentic search. Google have announced the Universal Commerce Protocol, known as the UCP, which is a new standard for agentic commerce. The UCP will allow agents to discover and purchase products more easily and adds new checkout features to Google's products like AI Mode and Gemini as well. And if you're not familiar with the previous iteration of the show where Mark and I usually sat in this room, we used to do a little thing like this, where I can actually show you the news, which is very exciting. I can actually read the articles and show them on screen. So if you're not watching, don't worry, I will read everything important to you. But if you are watching, you can actually check out the article on screen here. And this is directly from the Google blog, the Google developer blog, talking about what UCP is. And I'll basically read this little intro here and then give you my thoughts into what UCP means for us in SEO and what that means going forward. So the UCP is an open source standard designed to power the next generation of agentic commerce by establishing a common language and functional primitives. UCP enables seamless commerce journeys between consumer services, businesses, and payment providers. It's built to work with existing retail infrastructure and is compatible with a few different other protocols as well, payment supporting ones like the Agent Payments Protocol, and it also provides businesses flexible ways to integrate via APIs and MCPs as well. And I know we've talked about MCPs, and I know Mark has talked about MCPs a few times already to talk about how you connect LLMs to different tools and different products and things like that. And of course, the UCP is very much kind of Google's answer to how do you provide information for commerce agents and AI agents that are going to be doing purchasing for you. So this is kind of the future of agentic web that Google are talking about and have been talking about for a couple of years now. And they've been partnering with companies, big companies in the commerce space like Shopify and Etsy and Target and Walmart, and have kind of started developing this new universal commerce protocol. This basically allows us as e-commerce brands to create kind of like a feed for our products, for our services, and really focusing on what the e-commerce side of thing is for agentic, so that agents don't have to crawl your entire site. You can actually use this protocol to essentially kind of like a Google shopping feed, give the agents the information they need for your products. And there's even some demonstrations and little graphics and stuff here from Google showing how it works and how it's connecting basically customers to your back end directly through an agent so they can go through the checkout process and all that kind of stuff. And basically this is an example here that Google give of here's how to set all this up. So you start by setting up a business server and adding sample products to your store. Prepare your business server to accept requests from agents, so you need to enable that on the server side of things. Then enable your agent to discover business capabilities. Again, that's something you need to enable on that end of things. And then testing the checkout capabilities with the agent as well. And you can even apply discounts and things like that based on agents. There is a full kind of description and running the commands and all this kind of stuff that you can actually use to test out. And basically, I think this is big news because Google have been talking so much about the agentic web. We're all talking about agentic commerce and things like that as the future of e-commerce, I guess, as a whole. More and more agents are going to be buying things for us and things like that. So yeah, I think this is a big deal for the future of commerce on the internet, and can be something that Google are kind of setting themselves up in the forefront as we are establishing this standard, right? Kind of what Google have done with things like structured data and schema, where they're an active part of the development of new standards that allow us to provide clear, structured information to agents and crawlers and things like that. So yeah, I will put a link for, of course, for every single news story in the show notes. So if you do want to go and check out and read this in more detail and learn about the UCP, please do go and check that out. Next up, speaking of agents, we have Google's Business Agent. And this is a branded AI agent, essentially, that can answer questions on behalf of retailers and websites. And this is the announcement here. Like I said, if you're watching, you can see the article here on screen. And Business Agent is a conversational experience on Google search that allows shoppers to chat with your brand. It acts like a virtual associate that can answer product questions in your brand's voice and connects with customers at critical shopping moments to help drive sales. So you can essentially create a branded agent, give it essentially your source of truth of all of your products, your services, your brand, and allow an agent to have conversations with customers to then hopefully encourage them to convert, which I think is a really interesting idea, but I can also see it going very wrong. And there's an example I heard earlier today, funnily enough, where somebody was talking about basically a agent negotiated with a customer on like a web chat, and they negotiated a discount with the agent, and then the company is then responsible for honoring that discount, even though that discount is not offered anywhere on the website or by the retailer directly. The customer has negotiated that with a representative, for want of a better phrase, of the company. So who is liable there? Do you have to honor that? I think it was an 80% discount rather than a 25% discount, or, because the agent made that decision and made that call and negotiated with the customer, is the retailer not responsible for that? I think it's a really interesting, weird middle ground we're kind of getting ourselves into. It feels similar to a lot of what happened with early LLM stuff and AI mode and AI overviews in Google as well, but also things like early ChatGPT and Claude and all the other ones, where we the technology is there, but we're not fully understanding it before we're using it. And it's kind of getting carried away very quickly. In theory, this is a cool idea, and it can help to personalize information and, not have a person, an actual team doing customer service and answering basic questions and stuff like that. In theory, that's good, but I can see this going wrong pretty quickly, and there's already examples of things like this going wrong. If you do want to test this out, it is eligible to US retailers as of the 12th of January when we wrote this article in Core Updates, and you can activate it in Merchant Center, and there's actually a guide on the page, and I will link this in the show notes like I mentioned, to go and check that out and basically start setting yours up and customizing your business agent if you do want to do that. Next up, speaking of personalizations, Google have launched Personal Intelligence. This is the thing Google touched on at Google I/O, something Sundar Pichai talked about quite extensively in how they can personalize the search experience by connecting Gemini to other Google apps. So based on your YouTube searching and watching, or your Google Photos, or your search information, or your Gmail, that will personalize search results to you. So say, for example, I've got a history of booking a particular restaurant, and it can see the confirmations in my Gmail from previous bookings. When I ask, what kind of restaurants should I go and check out if I'm visiting Manchester next week? It can see that, I always book vegan restaurants or vegetarian restaurants or whatever it is in Norwich, so you probably want to book a vegan restaurant in Manchester. And basically it allows, the kind of connectivity of the whole Google ecosystem. And this is something Sundar Pichai, like I said, mentioned this in the Google I/O, the most recent one, where it is all opt-in. Obviously, it's not just going to take your Gmail and photos and YouTube searches and personalized search to you automatically. But this is kind of the advent and the initial step towards the full personalization of search. And I think this is a big deal because so many of us are worried about the personalization of search, the way we will not be able to do traditional SEO anymore if everything is fully personalized to individual users. And this is kind of the start of that. And I think this is very interesting, where you see how people are using it, and you can see that there is a real kind of, I want to say like a overtaking of the whole Google ecosystem. Very much feels like Google is trying to keep you in the Google ecosystem and keep you using Photos and YouTube and Gmail and all that kind of stuff. And obviously they talk a lot about privacy, and I think this is a very interesting part. As I said, they've confirmed it's opt-in, but I'm not convinced huge companies like this are particularly good with our data, considering the history of data leaks and dodgy scraping and stuff that's happened across many huge tech companies that are doing things with AI and LLMs. So I think this is an interesting thing. They have tested this in beta and are now sort of discussing and launching the betas in the US, which you can register for if you're a Google AI Pro or AI Ultra subscriber. And you can now try this on your Gemini app, try various different things and start connecting things up and testing the personalization of search, which I think is very interesting, but kind of terrifying, and could be very useful. could reduce the friction, in theory. To thinking on the positive side, could reduce the friction for customers significantly and help, narrow things down much more easily, but could also make things kind of a real pain when it comes to actually optimizing for this stuff as SEOs. Next up, let's talk about some Google Trends, which is not something we talk about very much on the show. There is now a really cool AI-powered, Gemini-powered insights option, and these new features basically allow you to provide prompts. So you can look at specific things and use the Trends Explorer, which has been completely revamped, to prompt Google Trends to search for particular things, to look at different options. And there's actually a little GIF demo here on screen, if you're watching, that is playing, various different things of, I want to search for this particular dog breed. I want to narrow it down by this thing. And it will auto-populate the chart with different terms, comparing the different searches and search terms and things like that. This seems pretty harmless to me, seems pretty cool, and a handy use of Gemini integrating with a Google product where this is actually going to save us time. Rather than manually searching and typing and, I want to compare these different products or different services or different dog breeds, as their example is here, you can actually automate that process and speed it up a little bit. And I think Google Trends is something a lot of people either sleep on for SEO or misuse and misunderstand, because those numbers are not absolute numbers. Just because something is 100 popularity does not make it the most popular thing in the world. It is all relative and subjective. So yeah, bear that in mind. If you are using Google Trends regularly for, planning content campaigns or thinking about digital PR and things like that, this could be really, really helpful, and it'll actually give you suggestions for lots of prompts and things to help you explore further. Hopefully this will ease that ideation process and actually help you explore more trends and use Google Trends more appropriately going forward, hopefully. Last couple of bits here. Let's get into some browsing. I know it's been a very Google heavy episode. They've been very busy at the start of 2026. This is, auto browse. Auto browse in Chrome. This is again talking about Agentic side of things, and the real kind of, there's a nice little video there that demonstrates it that I will again link in the show notes if you want to go and check that out. This is expanding the side panel multitasking option that Chrome has had for a little while now, where you can actually integrate Gemini into your browsing experience. The same thing you can do with things like Atlas and a lot of the other, and Comet, the Perplexity's answer to this, and Atlas being ChatGPT's version of the browser here. This is now bringing the Agentic experience to Chrome in a very real way. And this isn't even necessarily in an e-commerce way. We obviously talked about the UCP a couple of minutes ago, but this is actually bringing in the way you can introduce, let me just scroll down here. So the Chrome autofill is how they describe this. This is now expanding to do full-on Agentic stuff. And again, this is for AI Pro and Ultra subscribers in the US. You can now register for this and check this out. This basically does multi-step searches in a single search. And the example they use here, a couple of cool ones. So our testers have used it for all sorts of things, including scheduling appointments, filling out tedious online forms, collecting their tax documents, getting quotes for plumbers and electricians, checking if their bills are paid, filling expenses reports, managing their subscriptions, and speeding up renewing their driving licenses. In theory, all sounds great, right? It's a lot of time saved. It's automating a lot of those tedious, repetitive tasks that we do. And they also go into an example here of a more complex option. Let's say you're planning a Y2K themed party. Sure, people do that in 2026 apparently. And find inspiration in a photo that perfectly captures that era. Auto Browse, with its multimodal capabilities, can identify what's in the picture, search for similar items, and add them to your cart, staying within budget and even applying discount codes. And if you give the auto browse function permission, it can use Google Password Manager to handle tasks even if a sign-in is required. So it can even sign in. Like, we're way past the capture, recapture kind of era at this point. And of course, this is all tying into the UCP we covered just a couple of moments ago. And this is tying into a lot of what we're seeing with agentic side of things. And I think that in theory, this is very cool. Bringing together a multimodal element to it, I think, is particularly interesting to me, where browsing goes from just web-based to looking at things like Lens and Google Live, Search Live as well. And I know this is something we've covered a couple of times on the show before. It's very interesting to see how image search is developing, right? Literally, the example here, you can give it an example image and say, I want to host a party that looks like this, buy the products that will make things look cool, things that look like this. That's insane. That's a crazy powerful tool. But I'm still skeptical. I know I'm very skeptical on this show very often. But yeah, I think it's a cool idea. And I think the multimodal stuff is most interesting to me. I'm not particularly interested in Chrome doing browsing for me or filling out forms or anything like that. I've been filling out forms for years. A lot of it is auto-filled and stuff like that anyway. But I think the multimodal stuff, being able to give it a photo of, I want to do an event that looks like this, or host a party, or I want my home office to look like this, set up from this example photo. How can I do that? I think that's a cool idea and can save a lot of that planning and kind of multi-step buying process. Can be very, very cool and helps to reduce, hopefully, a lot of the mundane work. And yeah, this is a cool little demo here. They're showing how it's filling out forms here as well. They've got the recommend the best weekend for your stay based on criteria. So this is like booking accommodation and flights and stuff like that, which is cool. And then also write apartments and things like that. It's interesting. I think Google is really, really kind of accelerating this agentic experience more than we probably realize at the time. And now is the time to get in and understand and start researching and reading this kind of stuff. Like I said, links for everything in the show notes if you want to go and read everything I've been talking about, including the UCP and this agentic side of things as well. And I think this is, yeah, kind of the start of a lot of what Google is talking about with the agentic side of things. In this article, this is on the keyword, which is the Google blog, they also talk about Nano Banana, the AI-powered image editing, and you can transform images and regenerate images all within the browser now. So you don't even need to go. You're using Gemini basically as part of Chrome as a browsing assistant, and it can do that as well. And also allows multitasking inside panels, so you can browse a second thing or send it off to do an agentic task in a side panel while you continue browsing in your main tab and main panel there as well. Oh, right, that's a lot of agentic stuff. That's a lot of Google stuff. Let's get into a study that I thought was very interesting. This is from SparkToro. Rand Fishkin over at SparkToro always has some really interesting ideas for studies and research, and kind of covers a lot of what we maybe theorize or think about, and maybe there's some instincts or some common sense, but actually nothing beats doing a bit of research and getting a bit of data. I am a huge data nerd. I'm a science-driven kind of person, so I want to see data. I want to see evidence for these kind of things. I don't just want people to say, yeah, it's probably this, yeah, it's probably that. I know I'm guilty of that on the show, but I will always try and back up any, not necessarily opinions, but anything that I want to claim with data and studies and things like that. And this is one of them. So this study from SparkToro talks all about how AI search and LLM search is highly inconsistent when recommending brands and products. Basically what that means is, even if you replicate identical prompts, you will get drastically different answers. And this basically invalidates a lot of what people are doing for AI visibility in terms of prompt tracking. I know a lot of people are talking about prompt tracking. A lot of tools are trying to sell us on prompt tracking at the moment. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who, they work in-house, and they were contacted by an agency, and they were trying to sell them prompt, basically tracking. And they asked me, like, is this a thing? I was like, no, don't be ridiculous. That's not a thing. Definitely not. And yeah, my girlfriend was having this conversation with this agency being like, yeah, I don't think that's a valid thing that you're trying to sell us. You're trying to sell this like service that I don't think is actually valid. And thankfully, the marketing team there listened and didn't want to actually sign up for unnecessary AI-powered services from agents. Anyway, back to this study. This is really interesting. They got a bunch of different people basically to prompt and reprompt over and over and over again to run the same prompts in AI and LLM searches. They use ChatGPT, Claude, and Google AI overviews, that's AI mode. 600 people ran 12 different prompts through each of the three tools for a combined 2,961 times. And good Lord, there is a lot of variation here. There are some really interesting stats about how even the order of prompts would be different. The order of results. So even if it gave you the same results, so say you were asking, they use the example here of best science fiction novels, it might give you the same top 10, but it would be in a different order. So the ranking, for want of a better phrase, even with an identical prompt done by the same person multiple times, will change, which I think is fascinating. And there is 211 unique sci-fi novels across 99 responses. Google AI gave each user 10 plus sci-fi novel recommendations that were different almost every time. That is crazy. And the number of unique brands, there's a highlight across here. The amount of times that shifted as well is pretty crazy. How consistent were they in presenting the same list of brands? So interestingly, Claude is the most consistent there, and there is a less than 1 in 100 chance that ChatGPT or Google AI, if asked 100 times, will give you the same list of brands in any 2 responses. Claude is slightly more likely, but it is absolutely crazy, those numbers. I think that really kind of narrows it down that AI visibility tracking is not as simple as we think it is, and not as simple as a lot of people are trying to make it out to be when they're trying to sell you their tools and their services. I think there are a lot of charlatans trying to basically try and sell you stuff that doesn't actually work. So yeah, random lists, random numbers, they really tried to mix up. There's a really detailed study. I'll like I said, I'll link to the whole thing. This is a very, very long article. And for me, I think the really interesting parts of it are basically highlighting that the personalization of search, not even personalization, but randomization, I guess, is already starting to happen. We're already seeing how many of these kind of elements are already changing. And there is a really interesting discussion to be had about AI tracking, basically. And yeah, shout out to Rand and Patrick O'Donnell and Christy Morrison, Lindsay Perkin, Cyrus Shepherd, Darren Shaw, Amanda Natividad. There's a really interesting summary of it all as well. So I'll give you a quick little summary and I will link to the full thing. I highly recommend you go and check out this full study in detail. Like I said, links in the show notes, go and check it out. AIs rarely give the same list of brands or recommendations twice, so that's less than 1 in 100 times, no matter the question. AIs almost never give the same list of brands and recommendations in the same order, even in spaces with limited options, like Los Angeles-based Volvo dealers or SaaS cloud computer providers. So even when there is a limited list, they still don't provide the same list in the same order. These tools are probability engines. They're designed to generate unique answers every time. Thinking of them as sources of truth or consistency is provably nonsensical. We agree with that for sure. Users almost never craft similar prompts, even when they have the same intent. This is something I talk about all the time on the show. I think it comes up pretty much every single episode. The fact that I would write a prompt to search in a different way that you would basically summarizes it all. And this is something, again, I was talking to my girlfriend about the other day. The way we write prompts into things like ChatGPT or Google just dramatically changes. And because we are from different cultures and different backgrounds and things like that, the way we search and the fact that I barely use LLMs and stuff like that, and she's a far more experienced user of these kind of things, it's a really interesting thing to see even searching the same thing across two different people who kind of work in the same industry, in theory, I've said this to many guests on the podcast before, you and I both work in SEO, we've both roughly got the same amount of experience, but we would search for things in different ways. This is exactly what they're saying here. Last couple of ones. Measuring your brand's presence in AI answers with precision is a fool's errand. You can, with enough prompts run enough times, get a dartboard-like pattern comparing your answers with others. I've been swayed from my initial position. This is Rand speaking. I've been swayed from my initial position and now believe visibility percentage across dozens to hundreds of prompts run multiple times is the reasonable metric. And any AI tool that gives a ranking position in AI is full of baloney. I agree. And to summarize here, Rand, exactly what I've just been saying. If you do nothing else after reading this report, please, please, please stop throwing money at AI tracking products that don't provide stats-backed, publicly reviewable research. Before you spend a dime tracking AI visibility, make sure your provider answers the questions we've surfaced here and shows their maths. Agreed. You need the data to back this stuff up. There are some companies, and I will give huge credit to a company called Wayk. They are not sponsoring the podcast, but we have been using them in the agency recently. That's Dixon and a lot of the teams behind tools like InLinks and things like that. Shout out to Dixon Jones and on what Wayk have been doing. That has been doing some really interesting stuff for us when we've been using it with our clients and with some of the websites we've been working on. That does things in a little different way. It's not prompt tracking. It is actually more closely related to the percentage visibility tracking, which I think is something Rand brings up here as a very interesting kind of more reasonable metric to track. So with that out of the way, go and, like I said, read that research, read that study in full. Highly recommend it. And last, a very, very quick one to summarize here. We've got a new February 2026 Discover Core update. And I know a lot of people have been using Google Discover as kind of a little escape from what has been happening with AI overviews and AI mode. We've also seen AI overviews appearing in Google Discover, so there is no escape, and even ads being tested and appearing in Google Discover as well. So if you're a publisher using Google Discover as your primary source of traffic, this could be another warning for you here as well. And basically this focuses very much on clickbaity stuff, sensational headlines, and very much using, they use, what's the phrase they use here? Reducing sensational content and clickbait in Discover, showing users more locally relevant content from websites based in their country. Because I know Lily Ray and a few other people, I know Metan has been showing this as well, where you just get a bunch of weird results in Discover from other countries for no reason. You're getting languages you don't speak kind of results in Discover, and showing more in-depth, original and timely content from websites with expertise in a given area based on our system's understanding of a site's content. Sure, Google, yeah, that makes sense. It's fairly straightforward and fairly simple, and I think it's good to see Google focusing on Discover. I think it has been a thing a lot of people have slept on. We've done a couple of campaigns and kind of long-term strategies with clients here that have seen some really good success with Discover, but I've also seen people try to get Discover right and get it wrong, and it all go, big waste of time and things like that. It's just very much focusing on avoiding sensationalism, clickbaiting, and artificially inflating engagement and anything like that, which I've seen plenty of times from a lot of publishers. And I know most recently they've also been highlighting what a lot of people have been doing, where they not artificially inflate necessarily, but there's been a lot of the discussion of people doing the self-ranking kind of listicles, and Google seems to be punishing that in this update, where a lot of people have seen, top SEO agencies or whatever, and you write that article as an SEO agency and you rank yourself as number one. A lot of sites have been affected by that if they are listing, I'm the best podcast host written by me, that kind of stuff. That self-promotional crap that we see across the internet, that happens a lot, but thankfully that seems to be dying off, and Google seem to be calling out a lot of these rubbish self-ranking listicles, which is nice to see. So yeah, those are the 7 pieces of news I think you need to know about across the first 6 or so weeks of 2026. I'll be doing more news recaps and more episodes. Like I said, Mark and I will probably do an episode like this, and I'll keep doing these solo episodes in the meantime as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll come back to the main camera here. Hello. Welcome back to just me and my face if you're watching. And yeah, thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode of a solo of me just talking at you for 30 plus minutes about the latest news. As I said, there'll be links for absolutely everything in the show notes and the video description down below. So if you do want to go and read these articles and blog posts and research papers and all that kind of stuff in full, please do go and check those out. I will be back next week, and I've got some fantastic guests coming up over the next few weeks as well. And until then, have a lovely week. Thank you so much once again for watching or listening, and I'll see you next week.